Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to today's story. Black millionaire CEO insulted while relaxing by his pool. Moments later, he strikes back. You don't belong here. The words hit like a slap, loud, certain, and practiced. Elijah Grant didn't move. He sat by the turquoise edge of his Miami pool, book in hand, sunlight sliding off his watch. 3 men stood at the gate, one in a faded security vest, 2 in work shirts with property maintenance stitched in blue. Their eyes didn't see a homeowner. They saw a trespasser. Sir, the older guard barked, stepping forward. This pool's for residents only. You need to leave. Now. Elijah turned a page, calm as the water beside him. And what makes you so sure I'm not one? The guard scoffed. Come on, man, I know who lives here. You don't look the part. That sentence, he'd heard it before. Different voices, same tone. From a loan officer at 26, a gate guard at 30, a banker at 35. And every time it sounded like the same thing. You're not supposed to have this. The humid Miami air shimmered around him. Behind the villa's glass walls, the reflection of palm trees trembled on the marble floor. It was a perfect afternoon until prejudice turned it into a test. Don't make me call this in, the guard warned, radio already in hand. People try to sneak in all the time. Elijah finally closed his book, one finger still marking the page. His voice stayed soft, deliberate. You really want to make that call? The younger worker muttered, he doesn't even have a key card. Elijah smiled faintly. You'll find out soon enough who doesn't need one. Last chance, the guard snapped. State your name. Elijah Grant. The man frowned. Never heard of you. I'm sure you haven't, Elijah said. But you've been standing on my property for 5 minutes. The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. The radio clicked. The guard hesitated. Then arrogance won. I'm calling the cops, he said. Elijah leaned back, sunlight glinting off his sunglasses. Good, he murmured. They'll want to meet their new boss. He reached for his phone and pressed one name, Darius, corporate security. The call rang once. Then a calm voice answered, Protocol active, sir? Elijah's reply was quiet, almost serene. Yes, let's remind them who owns the water they're standing beside. And in that still, charged air, the storm began. The phone rang once. Protocol active, sir? Darius's voice came through calm, efficient, practiced. Elijah's tone barely moved. Yes, full verification. Within seconds, a soft chime echoed through the villa, the smart system humming to life. Hidden cameras along the pool deck rotated with quiet precision, red lights blinking as they scanned the property. The guards froze. Watching the house seemed to awaken around them. What the hell is that? One muttered. Elijah didn't answer. The villa's control panel, embedded in the marble wall, lit up with words no one in that yard expected to see. Owner recognized Grant Estate access. Confirmed. The guard with the radio shifted uneasily. Sir, if this is some kind of trick... Elijah looked at him over the rim of his sunglasses. The only trick here, he said, is how fast you turned arrogance into policy. Before the guard could respond, a silver SUV rolled up to the gate. The driver stepped out, a woman in a navy suit, calm, precise, holding a tablet. Darius's assistant, Nadia Fields, head of on-site operations. Mr. Grant, she said, approaching. Security feed is live. Corporate verification complete. Should I proceed? The guards exchanged looks. The younger one whispered, He's serious, isn't he? The older one squared his shoulders. Nobody told us any owner was coming. Elijah stood now, his reflection rippling in the water. That's because I live here. I don't arrive. I return. The villa's AI voice, soft and deliberate, echoed through discreet speakers. Welcome home, Mr. Grant. The words landed heavier than any shout could have. One of the guards took a nervous step back. Sir, we didn't mean... Elijah cut him off with a quiet raise of his hand. Meaning is what people say after they've been caught. Nadia glanced at her tablet. Police response en route, Mr. Grant. Someone reported a trespassing incident. Quote. Elijah gave a short, ironic laugh. Of course they did. He turned toward the gate just as a patrol car eased down the street. Lights off, casual. The officer stepped out. Scanning the scene, 3 men standing stiff. One man calm and composed beside a pool that looked like liquid glass. "Everything all right here?" the officer asked. Elijah gestured toward the guards. "They called you. Maybe let them explain why the homeowner is being asked to leave his own house." Quote. The younger guard opened his mouth, then stopped. No words came out. The officer frowned, looking at the glowing panel behind Elijah. "That's your name on the system, right?" "It is." Nadia stepped in, showing her credentials. "Corporate confirmation from Grant Holdings. Mr. Elijah Grant is the legal owner of this property and 6 surrounding parcels." The silence that followed was deafening. The officer exhaled, then turned to the guards. "You gentlemen might want to step aside." Quote. Elijah's eyes never left them. "They'll step aside," he said quietly, "and then they'll learn who they just embarrassed." The sun had dropped lower now, painting the water gold. And in that glow, power didn't shout. It simply existed, seen, undeniable, and finally recognized. "GPT Black CEO mới, 35 phút set." The tension didn't fade, it thickened. The officer stood awkwardly near the gate, one hand resting on his belt, unsure whether to apologize or salute. Behind him, the last of the daylight slipped into orange, reflecting off the pool like molten glass. Elijah didn't look angry. He looked focused, calm, the kind of calm that came from years of being tested by rooms that doubted his right to stand in them. "Mr. Grant," the officer started, "this seems like a misunderstanding." Elijah turned slightly, one eyebrow raised. "No, officer. A misunderstanding is when you forget a name. This was a decision." "Cool." Nadia handed the officer a small digital folder from her tablet. "Video and audio logs are already uploaded to your department's internal cloud. The call came from these men accusing a black homeowner of trespassing on his own property." The guards shifted, faces drained of confidence. The older ones swallowed hard. We didn't know." Elias' voice dropped low. "You didn't ask." He stepped closer, the soft thud of his bare feet echoing on the stone deck. "Tell me something," he said. "What made you think I didn't belong here? The way I'm dressed? The color of my skin? Or the fact that you assumed peace and success couldn't share the same face?" No one answered. Then, in a twist of irony almost cinematic, Elijah's phone buzzed. It was an automated alert from his company's Miami branch. Real estate division inspection, 7 p.m. He had forgotten the team was scheduled to arrive that evening to review the new security automation system. And as if on cue, headlights appeared at the end of the drive. 3 luxury sedans rolled in, tinted windows down, executives in tailored suits stepping out. Their badges read Grant Holdings Security Engineering Division. The guard supervisor, Mark, the one who had first accused Elijah, stared, stunned. "They work for you?" Elijah didn't blink. "No," he said. "They work because of me." The officer exhaled quietly. "Looks like my work here is done." He turned to Elijah with a faint nod. "Sorry for the trouble, sir." Elijah gave a polite half-smile. "You didn't cause it, officer. But maybe next time don't show up assuming who the threat is." As the police car rolled away, one of the guards took a hesitant step forward. "Mr. Grant, please, we meant no harm." Elijah tilted his head, studying him. "Harm isn't always a punch, son. Sometimes it's a presumption." Nadia looked up from her tablet. "Do you want me to report them to property management?" "Not yet," Elijah said softly. "They're about to understand consequence." From the villa speakers, the AI voice chimed again, crisp and unbothered. "Corporate delegation has arrived, Mr. Grant. Would you like to begin review protocol?" Elijah nodded once. "Yes, let's make this educational." Quote. And as the executives walked toward the pool shaking his hand, greeting him as Chairman Grant, the 3 guards stood frozen, faces pale in the warm Miami twilight. The man they tried to remove had just turned their ordinary workday into a masterclass on dignity, and the lesson had only just begun. The villa lights shifted to a warm gold hue as the corporate team spread out across the deck, setting down briefcases and tablets. The air smelled faintly of sea salt and tension. Behind them, the 3 guards stood rigid near the gate, caught between shame and disbelief. "Gentlemen," Elijah said, his voice calm but cutting through the space like a low hum of authority. "Since you're still here, you'll have a front-row seat to what professionalism looks like." The lead engineer, a tall man named Carter Reeves, approached with a practiced smile. "Evening, sir. We're ready to begin the systems audit. You want to include the property staff in the demonstration?" Elijah glanced toward the guards. They insisted on being involved earlier. Let's give them what they wanted. A few quiet laughs escaped from the executives. Carter swiped his tablet, and a large holographic interface appeared mid-air, blue lines and digital grids overlaying the entire pool area. "We're testing full AI verification tonight," Carter explained. "Facial recognition, behavior mapping, ownership response." Quote, "Perfect timing," Elijah said dryly. "We already had a case study." The younger guard muttered under his breath, "Man, this is unreal." Elijah turned slightly, catching it. "No," he said, "it's accountability." As Carter initiated the scan, the holographic system pulsed. A digital voice filled the air. "Scanning, unauthorized personnel detected. 3 individuals. Initiating access suspension." A soft click echoed. The guard's ID badges went dim, completely deactivated. The older guard touched his lanyard, confused. "What's happening?" "Protocol," Carter replied. "When someone triggers a false security call, the system automatically freezes their credentials until the owner reviews the incident." The color drained from the men's faces. Nadia, still standing near the pool's edge, folded her arms. "Mr. Grant, property management just called." Words spreading through the district. Apparently this wasn't their first incident. Elijah nodded slowly. "No, it never is." He turned back to the guards. "How many others have you accused? How many people didn't have a system like this to prove you wrong?" The silence that followed was thick enough to hear the waves from the bay beyond the wall. Elijah took a breath and spoke again, steady, deliberate. "You came here tonight thinking you were protecting this community. But communities don't need protection from people like me. They need protection from prejudice disguised as procedure." Quote. Carter lowered the hologram's intensity. The floating light reflected in Elijah's sunglasses like fire. "System audit complete," Carter announced. "Ownership verified. Unauthorized call logged. Report filed." "Send the report to corporate and the HOA," Elijah said. "They'll know what to do with it." The guards didn't move. The younger one whispered, "Are we fired?" Elijah didn't answer right away. He looked at the quiet water, its surface catching the last light of dusk. "Not yet," he said finally, "but you're about to find out what reflection feels like." The executives packed their gear. The villa returned to silence, except for the steady ripple of the pool, a mirror to the night sky, and the men who had just watched their certainty dissolve in it. The night deepened, but the tension refused to fade. The reflection of the pool lights shimmered against the marble deck, turning the air electric. Elijah stood quietly at the edge of the water, his hands in his pockets, as the corporate team packed up their cases. The 3 guards lingered, unsure whether to leave or apologize. Finally, Elijah turned to them. "You can stop pretending this didn't happen," he said evenly. "Silence doesn't erase what you did, it just confirms it." The older guard, Mark, the supervisor, cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant, we made a mistake. We thought—" "You assumed," Elijah interrupted. "That's what people call it when they act before thinking. And you didn't just assume wrong. You assumed loud." Mark looked down, mumbling something about just doing the job. But Elijah wasn't finished. "Your job is to keep people safe. You can't do that when you're busy deciding who belongs and who doesn't." Nadia stepped closer, her tablet glowing with new notifications. "Sir, the Homeowners Association is requesting a statement. The footage is already circulating on local feeds." Quote. Elijah exhaled sharply through his nose. "Of course it is." On the big screen inside the villa, visible through the glass, security footage was looping. The guard's voice echoed faintly from the speakers. "Sir, this area is for residents only. You need to leave." Someone in the HOA's media team had already flagged it as sensitive incident under review. The younger guard rubbed his forehead. "I didn't mean for it to go viral." Elias Chaza hardened. "It didn't go viral because of the camera. It went viral because it's the same story told 1,000 times. Tonight, it just had better lighting." The Villa AI interrupted softly. "Incoming call. Carla Evans, corporate legal." Elijah nodded at Nadia. "Patch her through." Carla's calm, confident voice filled the pool deck. "Mr. Grant, I've reviewed the footage. Miami PD logged the trespass call at 7:03 p.m. We'll be submitting the full recording to both the HOA board and the District Oversight Committee. You have full discretion to proceed." Elijah's tone didn't change. "Thank you, Carla. Keep it formal, facts only, no emotion." "Yes, sir." The line clicked off. He looked back at the guards, 3 men who now looked smaller under the warm villa lights. "I built this community so people could live without fear," he said. "You turned that into an interrogation room." Quote. The younger one whispered, "Are you going to ruin our careers?" Elijah shook his head. "No, you did that when you made someone's skin color your evidence." Nadia approached again, showing him her screen. Sir, your statement can be uploaded to the HOA portal now. Elijah nodded slowly. Do it, but make sure it stays public. No edits, no PR spin. Then he turned back to the guards, voice low, final. You thought you were protecting property. You forgot you were standing on mine. Quote. He walked toward the villa doors, the sound of his footsteps blending with the soft ripple of water, each step steady, deliberate, and irreversible. The next morning, the Miami sun hit the villa like a verdict, bright, merciless, and impossible to ignore. The night's silence had broken into whispers across the neighborhood. Screenshots of the incident were everywhere, the guard pointing at Elijah, the caption reading, "Wealthy black man harassed at his own pool." Quote. Inside the villa, Elijah stood by the glass wall, coffee in hand, watching reporters gather near the gated entrance. The quiet hum of his smart blinds moving down sounded like a sigh. Nadia entered, crisp in a gray suit, tablet in hand. "Morning, sir," she said. "The HOA board wants an in-person meeting. Half the community saw the footage before it was taken down." Elijah turned slightly, eyes sharp. "They tried to bury it already?" "Within an hour," she replied. "But once the clip hit the local station, it spread faster than they could scrub it." He smiled, faintly tired but sure. "Sunlight's a great disinfectant." Nadia hesitated. "There's one more thing. Mark the head guard called. He wants to apologize in person." Elijah didn't look surprised. "Let him come." At 10:07 a.m., Mark arrived at the gate, hat in hand. The AI voice recognized his badge but didn't unlock the entrance. "Access restricted. Awaiting owner approval." Quote. Elijah pressed a button on his phone. The gate opened halfway enough to make a point. Mark stepped through, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. "Mr. Grant," he started quietly, "I don't expect forgiveness, I just want to say, I was wrong." Elijah studied him for a long moment. "Wrong about what? That I own this house? Or that people like me can?" Mark's throat tightened. "Both." Nadia stood a few steps behind, recording for documentation. Elijah gestured to her. "Keep this on record. Not for revenge, for training." Mark nodded quickly. "I understand. I've already resigned from the security firm. They suspended my team. I just wanted to tell you face to face, I'm sorry." Elijah took a slow sip of his coffee, never breaking eye contact. "You didn't humiliate me, Mark. You humiliated yourself. You built a whole protocol on prejudice and called it safety." Mark's eyes glossed over. "My son saw the video," he murmured. "He asked why I treated someone that way. I didn't have an answer." For a second, Elijah's face softened. Then he said, "Then give him one. Tell him the truth. You thought power looked one way and you were wrong." Mark nodded silently. Tears barely held back. The AI chimed again. Incoming call from Carla Evans, corporate legal. Elijah turned away, speaking calmly. "Carla, go ahead." "Mr. Grant," she said, "the HOA has issued a formal apology and requested your presence for a public statement this afternoon." Quote. "Public?" Elijah asked. "Yes, they want to show unity." Elijah set down his coffee, eyes steady on the sunlit water. "Good," he said. "Then they'll see what accountability looks like in daylight." And as Mark left the property, the gate closed behind him with a quiet, mechanical click like the sound of a chapter ending, not with anger, but with consequence. By noon, the Miami air had turned heavy and bright, the kind that makes even apologies feel staged. Elijah's black SUV pulled into the community center parking lot, followed by Nadia and two members of the Grant Holdings media team. Reporters were already waiting, cameras aimed, mics lifted like weapons of curiosity. Inside, the HOA boardroom was sleek and sterile, marble table, bottled water, and fear disguised as professionalism. 6 board members sat stiffly, each rehearsing their sympathetic faces. The HOA president, a polished man in a tan blazer named Robert Klein, stood as Elijah entered. "Mr. Grant," he began, voice brittle with politeness, "thank you for agreeing to meet. On behalf of the Homeowners Association, we deeply regret what occurred last night." Elijah nodded once, taking a seat at the head of the table. Nadia placed a tablet before him. The security footage paused on the frame where Mark had pointed at Elijah by the pool. "Regret," Elijah repeated softly. "That's a good start. But tell me, was it regret before or after the video went viral?" The room froze. Robert cleared his throat. Of course, we were unaware of the details until the footage surfaced." Elijah leaned back, calm but unyielding. "So, not regret reaction." A younger board member, clearly nervous, chimed in. "We understand how this looks, Mr. Grant. Our community values inclusivity." Elijah interrupted gently. "You don't value inclusivity. You value image. And yesterday your image cracked." The words landed like a gavel. Nadia's camera recorded silently from the corner. Robert tried to recover. "We've already terminated the contract with the external security firm. We're also instituting new bias training for all personnel." Elijah glanced at Nadia, then back to the board. "Good, but training doesn't fix a culture that rewards silence." He stood and walked toward the massive window overlooking the pristine lawns outside. "Do you know why I built my home here?" he asked without turning. "Because I wanted my son to swim without someone thinking he didn't belong in his own backyard." No one dared respond. "Last night," he continued, "your guards didn't just question me. They questioned what success looks like when it has my skin tone. And you all sat comfortably behind policies that made that possible." Robert started to speak, but Elijah raised a hand. "Don't rush to agree. Let it sting a little." A quiet moment stretched. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner filled the room. Then Elijah turned back, composed but firm. "This isn't about firing a few guards or signing an apology letter. It's about building a system where people are seen before they're judged. I'll fund a program for that through my company. But it will carry my name, not yours." Robert blinked. "You mean?" "Yes," Elijah said. "Grant Equity Initiative. Every resident, every employee, every board member will complete it, and every result will be public." He walked to the door, paused, and added quietly, "Apologies fade. Systems don't. Choose wisely which one you build." Then he left the boardroom, and for the first time that day, the silence inside wasn't about discomfort, it was about reckoning. The press conference began at 4 o'clock sharp. The Miami heat pressed against the glass facade of the community center, blurring the view of palm trees outside. Inside, a small podium stood beneath the HOA logo, now sharing space with another, Grant Holdings. Elijah stepped to the microphone without notes, without a teleprompter, dressed in a black suit that matched his composure. Nadia stood a few feet behind him, tablet ready, live stream already rolling. Cameras clicked like an anxious heartbeat. "Good afternoon," Elijah began, voice steady, low, but carrying weight. "Yesterday, I was told I didn't belong by people whose job was to protect the place I built. That moment wasn't new. It's an echo of something many of us have lived our whole lives." He paused, letting the murmurs settle. "But this time," he continued, "the echo met a wall, the wall of proof, ownership, dignity." Quote. Behind him, a large screen showed a still image from the security footage, the guard's hand pointing at Elijah, his calm expression unmoved. The room went silent. "I don't stand here today to humiliate anyone," he said. "I stand here because silence costs too much, and I won't pay that price anymore." Reporters scribbled furiously. A woman from the local station raised her hand. "Mr. Grant, do you believe this incident was racially motivated?" Elijah met her eyes. "I believe bias doesn't need intention to do damage. Sometimes it wears a uniform, sometimes it wears a smile. Last night it wore both." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nadia's live feed ticked past 50,000 viewers. He continued, voice firm but calm. "This community will not erase this moment with PR statements or half-hearted reforms. As of today, we are launching the Grant Equity Initiative mandatory training, transparent audits, and a standing committee led by residents, not executives. Every conversation, every complaint, every act of bias will be logged and reviewed publicly." A man in the back called out, "Isn't that extreme?" Elijah turned slightly toward him. "Extreme is calling the police on a man for existing beside his own pool. This is balance." For a beat, no one spoke. Then scattered applause began quiet at first, then growing louder, until it filled the hall. Even the reporters lowered their pens for a moment. Nadia leaned close, whispering, "Sir, it's trending. Number Grant Initiative is all over Twitter." Elijah didn't smile. "Let it trend," he said softly, "but make sure it lasts." The HOA president, Robert Klein, stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Grant, on behalf of this community, thank you for leading this with grace." Elijah looked at him. Unreadable. "Grace isn't permission, Robert. It's restraint." The applause grew again. Cameras flashed. As Elijah stepped away from the podium, the AI voice from his phone chimed quietly in his pocket. Protocol follow-up complete. Incident archived under Community Reform Directive. He walked toward the exit as reporters shouted questions behind him, but he didn't turn back. Outside, the sky had shifted to deep orange, the kind of light that makes even truth look cinematic. And for once, Miami's heat didn't feel oppressive. It felt like clarity. By the next morning, the world had already chosen its headline. Black CEO turns racial profiling into reform movement. The clip from Elijah's speech had hit every major outlet overnight. CNN replayed it. Twitter split it into 10 versions. Even LinkedIn couldn't resist quoting his line. Grace isn't permission, it's restraint. Cool. Inside his Miami villa, the same pool that started it all shimmered quietly beneath the rising Sunday. Elijah sat at the edge, barefoot, reading through the morning reports on his tablet. Nadia stood nearby, fielding calls. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. "Sir," she said, "we've had 78 corporate requests for partnership. Universities want to license your training model. Even the mayor's office reached out." Elijah didn't look up. "They always call when the cameras do." Quote. Nadia hesitated. The guard's story hit the press, too. Mark gave an interview. He said the incident changed how he sees people. Elijah's jaw tightened. "It's not about seeing, it's about doing. Let's see if he keeps that energy when no one's watching." The villa's AI voice interrupted softly. "Incoming call. Carla Evans, corporate legal." "Put her through," Elijah said. Carla's calm tone filled the space. "Morning, Mr. Grant. Quick update. The HOA board has approved your initiative. But there's more. You've been invited to testify at the State Housing Commission. They want your take on bias in private security contracts." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Testify?" "Yes," Carla said. "It's public, broadcasted." For a moment, he didn't answer. The sound of water lapping against the pool filled the silence. Then he said, "Good. Maybe this time they'll listen before they apologize." Nadia smiled faintly. "You're turning one night into a statewide reform." He looked at her. "Not reform, reminder." The AI spoke again. "Visitor detected. Property gate in trance." Nadia checked the monitor. "It's Zara, journalist from Channel 4. She was outside the press conference yesterday. She says she's here for a follow-up interview." Alaya sicht. "Let her in." Moments later, Zara walked up the path, camera crew in tow. She was young, confident, eyes bright with purpose. "Mr. Grant, thank you for seeing us. People are calling this the poolside revolution. How does it feel to spark national conversation overnight?" Elijah set his tablet down. "I didn't spark anything. The fire was already there. I just stopped pretending not to smell the smoke." The camera light glowed. Zara leaned forward. "So what comes next?" He looked past her, to the water, the palm trees, the horizon. "Next," he said, "we build systems that remember what people forget after the hashtags fade." Zara smiled. "That's powerful." Elias' voice dropped lower. Powerful would be not needing to say it at all. The interview ended with silence, a silence that carried weight. As the crew packed up, Elijah turned to Nadia and said quietly, "Schedule the commission hearing. I'm not done speaking yet." The pool rippled in the morning light, like applause no one could hear but everyone would feel. The hearing room at the Florida State Housing Commission looked like every other space built for bureaucracy: cold marble floors, muted lights, and rows of polite faces pretending not to stare. But today was different. The cameras were live. The name Elijah Grant trended nationwide, and the man at the center of it all sat calm, composed, and ready. Nadia stood behind him, tablet in hand, quietly briefing him as Carla Evans arranged the paperwork at the table. "You'll have 10 minutes to make your statement," Nadia whispered. "They'll open the floor for questions after." Elijah nodded once. 10 minutes is enough. At precisely 9 a.m., the chairwoman tapped her gavel. "Mr. Grant, thank you for appearing today. You may begin." He rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and approached the microphone. The air in the room shifted. People leaned forward as though gravity had changed. "Good morning," Alaya began. "My name is Elijah Grant, CEO of Grant Holdings. A week ago, I was told I didn't belong at my own home, beside my own pool. That moment wasn't about property. It was about perception." He paused, scanning the faces before him: lawmakers, reporters, executives, and more than a few skeptics. "I'm not here for sympathy," he continued. "I'm here because that moment revealed a pattern. In this state, bias has a budget. Companies are paid to enforce prejudice and call it security." The audience stirred. Cameras zoomed in. When a black man in a t-shirt is seen as a threat before he's seen as a neighbor, that's not protection. That's policy. And I'm done pretending it's accidental. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a measured strike. He tapped his tablet, and the screen behind him lit up with real-time data from Grant Holdings' new equity audit program. Graphs, case studies, and anonymized reports glowed on the display. "This," he said, "is what accountability looks like. Every contract we sign, every property we manage will be tracked and reviewed for bias publicly. I invite every company in this room to do the same. Transparency isn't a threat, it's a mirror." The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Grant, some are calling your plan too radical. How do you respond?" Eliach smiled slightly. "Radical? The idea that people should be treated with respect in the homes they pay for. If that's radical, maybe the system isn't as civilized as we think." Scattered applause broke the stillness. Then a journalist in the corner called out, "Mr. Grant, are you planning to run for office?" Elijah chuckled, shaking his head. "No, I already have enough power. I just want to use it right." He stepped back, leaving the screen glowing behind him. The gavel struck once more, signaling the end of the session, but the air didn't relax. Something had shifted an old system, realizing it had just been seen. As he walked out, Nadia whispered, "That was perfect." Elijah looked ahead, eyes calm, voice steady. Perfect is when this speech isn't necessary. Outside, sunlight exploded against the marble steps. Reporters shouted his name, flashes erupted, and somewhere behind all that noise, the quiet truth stood tall. He hadn't raised his voice, he'd raised a standard. By evening, the commission hearing had become the story of the day. News anchors replayed Elijah's words in slow motion, quoting him like scripture. "Bias has a budget. Companies are paid to enforce prejudice and call it security." The clip was everywhere. Back at his Miami villa, the pool glowed again this time, not as the scene of humiliation, but as a monument of change. The air smelled of salt, jasmine, and quiet victory. Elijah stood by the water, still in his suit, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His reflection in the blue light looked both weary and resolute. Nadia approached from the patio doors, tablet in hand. "You broke the internet again," she said softly. "Over 3 million views in 6 hours. Hashtags in 12 languages. Quote." Elijah didn't look up. "Views fade. Systems stay." Carla called. Nadia continued. "The Housing Commission voted to review statewide policies on private security bias. Your data presentation pushed it over the edge." Elijah let out a slow breath. "Good, that's the start." From the corner of the villa, a low electronic tone hummed the AI system, speaking for the first time since the night of the incident. "Incoming message. Source unknown. Subject line, thank you." Quote. Nadia frowned, opening it carefully. "It's from Mark," she said. "He sent a video message." "Play it," Elijah said. The screen filled with Mark's face, lit by the weak glow of a living room lamp. He looked smaller, humbled. His voice trembled but steady. "Mr. Grant, I watched the hearing today. My son did too. He asked if you were angry. I told him no, you were patient. You didn't destroy me. You educated me. I'll spend the rest of my career teaching others what that looks like. Thank you." Quote. The video ended. Silence followed, only the soft rhythm of water moving against tile. Nadia looked up. "You just changed a man's life." Elijah shook his head gently. "He changed his own. I just gave him a mirror." The AI chimed again. Public response. 87% approval, trending phrase, the Grant standard. Nadia smiled. "They've turned your name into a benchmark." Elijah laughed quietly. "Let's make sure it means something real." His phone buzzed. A text from Carla. "HUD wants to meet. They're drafting a federal model based on your program." Elijah stared at the message for a moment, the weight of it settling in. "Federal?" he murmured. "That's bigger than I planned." Nadia crossed her arms. "You didn't plan it, sir. You lived it." He walked closer to the pool, watching the reflection of the villa lights ripple over the water. "Funny," he said. "They said I didn't belong here. Now they're asking me how to build the future." Quote. The AI's final voice note of the night carried softly through the speakers. Protocol complete. Incident resolved. Elijah looked out at the horizon where the last trace of daylight met the dark Atlantic. "No," he whispered. "It's not resolved. It's rewritten." And as the night deepened, the pool that once mirrored prejudice now reflected progress, still water carrying the weight of a storm that finally knew peace. A week later, Miami moved at its usual rhythm: sunlight, motion, noise, but something under the surface had changed. The story hadn't faded like most viral moments do. It had evolved into something permanent. Across the country, companies and communities were adopting the Grant Equity Initiative. For the first time, policy and empathy were speaking the same language. Elijah sat at his desk overlooking Biscayne Bay, the skyline catching the afternoon glow. His office was quiet except for the faint hum of the automated blinds lowering against the heat. Nadia entered, carrying 2 folders. "One for corporate, one for government," she said. "Carla's coordinating both. The federal model's officially approved." Elijah nodded, eyes still on the horizon. "So it's real now." "It's more than real," she said. "It's required." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried gratitude and exhaustion in equal measure. "Then we did something right." Quote. Nadia hesitated, then added, "You're scheduled to speak at the National Equity Summit next month. They want you to close the event." Elijah exhaled, half amused. "Full circle. They wouldn't even let me into those rooms 10 years ago. Now you're the keynote," Nadia said with a grin. Outside, a light breeze moved across the balcony, stirring the curtains. Elijah stood, walking toward the window. Down below, the pool shimmered in the same quiet blue it had that night, unchanged, but somehow transformed. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone. "It started here, with 3 men who thought authority meant power. Turns out, power meant responsibility." Nadia smiled. "And you carried both." The AI voice came through the office speakers, calm and precise. "Mr. Grant, local school representatives are waiting in the lobby. They've requested a partnership for community programs under the Grant Foundation." Elijah turned, eyes brightening. "Send them in." Minutes later, a group of teachers and students entered, young, diverse, and eager. One of the students, a teenage boy, held up his phone shyly. "Sir, we watched your speech in class. My dad said you changed the way people think about success." Elijah crouched slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. "No," he said gently. "Your dad's success was always valid. Some people just needed a reminder." The boy grinned, and in that simple expression, Elijah saw everything he'd fought for dignity passing quietly to the next generation. As they left, Nadia turned to him. "You realize, right? You didn't just rewrite one policy, you rewrote the narrative." Elijah looked back at the pool one last time, sunlight glinting on its surface like truth reflecting itself. "Maybe," he said softly, "but stories don't end when the screen fades. They end when people stop learning." He picked up his jacket, walking toward the door. "Come on, Nadia. Let's go remind a few more rooms who belongs." And as the camera of life pulled back over the villa, over the bay, over a city still learning how to see, the voice of the narrator returned, low and resolute. He never shouted. He never begged. He simply stood where he was told he didn't belong and turned that place into proof that he always did. Quote, "The screen would fade to black, but his story would keep echoing, like sunlight on water, refusing to disappear."